On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, day 169, Hamas announces the death of another Israeli hostage in the Gaza Strip, publishing a video stating that the 34-year-old died as a result of lack of food and medicines. Israel gives its response in the hostage negotiations, declaring some compromises on prisoner release but refusing a complete ceasefire. The ball now goes to Hamas. 19 Palestinians killed in Gaza City while waiting for an aid convoy. Hamas states that IDF tanks fired into the area. The IDF states that no such fire occurred. Escalations between Israel and Hezbollah. The IDF carried out an attack in the Baalbek region of Lebanon. Hezbollah fires over 50 rockets and missiles in response. UN Secretary General visits Rafah on the Egyptian side, calls for an immediate ceasefire and a, quote, end to the nightmare that Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are experiencing. Hello everyone, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas War. It is currently the evening of March 23, 2024 in the United States, the morning of March 24, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, Hamas released a video today stating that another Israeli hostage has died in captivity. The Al-Qassam video shows Yegev Buchstel, a 34-year-old Israeli, in the video. As he says his name in the video, sound effects show a heart monitor that then goes flatlined, and the message then appears saying that he had managed to survive the IDF bombings in the Gaza Strip, but he died as a result of lacking food and medicines. The statement then switches to say that as Gazan people suffer from the siege and shortage of food and medicines, so will the hostages. No response was given to this by the IDF. In fact, this was not reported in none of the Israeli media. This is similar to when Hamas declared at the beginning of March that 7 Israeli hostages had died in IDF bombings. It was not reported anywhere in Israel as well, and no official response was given. Likely this is a result of military censorship. The IDF thus far has officially confirmed the deaths of 35 out of 134 hostages in the Gaza Strip, although once again, since that confirmation, Hamas has stated that at least 8 hostages have died. In addition, different leaks from intelligence reports have estimated that both Israel and the United States estimate that possibly another 20 hostages are dead. However, this report was today released by the Al-Qassam brigades. Regarding the ongoing negotiations for the hostage deal that are going on in Qatar, Israel reportedly gave its answer today to negotiators regarding Hamas's demands, and according to reports, it included an Israeli agreement to a compromise that was proposed by the United States regarding the number of Palestinian prisoners that will be released for each Israeli hostage. While the details of Israel's answer and the details of the specific compromise were not published, Al Jazeera quoted Israeli sources giving partial information about the answer, stating that Israel's answer to Hamas includes the gradual return of 2,000 Palestinian civilians per day to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip in a mechanism that will start 2 weeks after the truce begins, and the release of 5 quote-unquote heavy Palestinian prisoners, i.e. those prisoners that are sentenced for life in prison in Israel, for every female IDF soldier that is released. Hamas's initial demand was that at least 30 such prisoners be released for each female soldier. The compromise that is being proposed is that 5 such prisoners be released. However, again, it was not reported what else this compromise includes. Israel also insists on expelling these heavy prisoners from the country, and at the same time, Israel refuses to cancel its hold of the Netzarim or Nusirat corridor that divides the southern parts of the Gaza Strip and the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, and Israel has refused to agree in the initial stages of any agreement to a long-term ceasefire and IDF withdrawal. So, according to what has been leaked, Israel is compromising with Hamas in the sense of agreeing to release some quote-unquote heavy Palestinian prisoners, although not nearly the amount that Hamas was demanding, but is not agreeing to some of the other terms that Hamas said are an initial condition for them entering into any deal. Israeli sources stated that the ball is now in Hamas's court, with expectations being that it's going to take at least 2 to 3 days for the messages to go back and forth between the Hamas leadership abroad and the leadership in the Gaza Strip. Regarding the summit that is going on in Qatar, the senior officials in Israel's delegation, including the head of the Mossad, the head of the Shabak, and General Nitzan Alon, are all returning to Israel from Qatar. However, it was emphasized in the reports that this is not a breakdown in the negotiations, how they are returning, as was planned initially, for consultations after Israel has given its answer. Moving on to the Gaza Strip, there was one barrage of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip targeting the areas of Nir Oz in Israel in the last 24 hours. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip at Al-Shifa Hospital, the IDF operation continues. This is now the sixth day that the operation is going on. IDF forces continue to comb different parts of the structure and facilities in the compound, as well as establishing security details and a perimeter around the hospital. According to reports, over 170 Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other armed fighters have been killed in the gun battles within the compound, and over 800 suspects have been arrested thus far. The Al-Qassam brigades reported today intensive fighting around the hospital compound, and that several IDF vehicles were targeted with mortars. In addition, the group stated that it fired a rocket towards IDF soldiers that were held up in a building in the vicinity of the hospital, confirming several injuries of the IDF soldiers. In addition to this, the Al-Quds brigades, that is the military wing of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, reported dismantling explosives in a booby-trapped house that the IDF had left in a structure near Al-Shifa, stating that it has taken the explosives to reuse in the war. Regarding those who were arrested today, sources in the Gaza Strip reported that among those was Saeed Basharat. He's a former Palestinian prisoner who was released in the Shalit deal of 2011 and then expelled to Gaza. Basharat is a member of the Al-Qassam brigades and participated in a series of terror attacks in the past. Recently, he became a commentator for Israeli affairs on Hamas's media channels. Other news related to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. The Hamas-run Palestinian Communications Ministry put out a statement today that Palestinian civilians had gathered in the outskirts of Gaza City as they were awaiting an aid convoy, and they were fired upon by IDF tanks, resulting in 19 Palestinian deaths and 23 injuries. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip confirmed the amount of casualties, however did not put out specific statements about the circumstances. Later in the day, the IDF put out a statement saying that no fire was carried out by the IDF in the area. The statement also added, and I quote, "The entrance of a food aid convoy was coordinated for 11 a.m., and on its way to its destination, it was stopped and looted by hundreds of Gazans. No aerial attack was carried out at the convoy, and the IDF does not know of any incident where soldiers fired upon people in the area. A thorough investigation is underway." So right now, the Hamas Communication Ministry is stating that these Palestinian civilians died as a result of IDF fire. The Palestinian Health Ministry is confirming that there are these many casualties, and at the same time, the IDF is saying that they may have died as a result of ongoing fighting during the looting, but that no IDF fire occurred in the area. In the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, in Han Yunis, there was intensive fighting that is continuously being reported in the El Karara region. This is the eastern parts of Han Yunis. These includes both gun battles on the ground as well as airstrikes. A Hamas military structure was reportedly bombed in the area in the last 24 hours. In Rafah, a bombing was reported in the southern parts of the city, killing at least 5 people, 4 of whom were reported children. No information was given by the IDF regarding what was being targeted. The attack is reportedly in the vicinity between Han Yunis and Rafah. Regarding casualties, no IDF soldier is reported killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, leaving the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began on 251. 8 IDF soldiers reported injured in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. That brings the total number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 1,507. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 72 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 32,142. 74,412 Palestinians were reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, the IDF reported that they coordinating a substantial amount of medical and humanitarian aid that entered Al-Shifa Hospital as part of their operation, and that a designated humanitarian area has been created in the compound to where patients and staff have been evacuated and medical infrastructure has been set up. According to the IDF, the materials brought into the hospital include tens of thousands of medicines, painkillers, bandages, infusions, advanced medical and monitoring equipment, and the IDF also coordinated the entrance of 2 tons of food and 3 tons of water. There were no reports again today, as there were no reports yesterday, regarding the aid paradropping missions that were carried out in the Gaza Strip. However, I am still estimating that these paradropping missions are being carried out. They have been carried out every day consistently since they began well over a week ago. In the last week, there have been several instances where it was not reported, and later it was reported how much aid was paradropped into the Gaza Strip. There have been no reports that these missions have stopped, and thus, even though it's not being reported, likely there were several missions that were carried out in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, if not the entire Gaza Strip. Moving on to the West Bank, one IDF soldier reportedly died from his wounds that were sustained from the sniper attack that was carried out by a Palestinian yesterday in the areas near Ramallah. You can see more about that attack that lasted over 5 hours in my report yesterday. Regarding what happened today, a Palestinian carried out an attack near the IDF Salem outpost near Jenin. Shooting was reported in the area. No injuries were reported and the Palestinian escaped. Regarding IDF activity, IDF forces operated in the Deir Ibzia village, including mapping out the house of Mujahid Barkat Mansour, the attacker from the sniping attack yesterday, reportedly preparing for its destruction by the IDF. Other IDF activity was reported in the areas of Nablus, Aram village, Tulkarim, Tubas, Bethlehem, and Kharbata village. The IDF reported 4 Palestinians were arrested throughout the West Bank in the last 24 hours. However, the Palestinian Prisoner Society reported that 15 Palestinians were arrested throughout the West Bank in the last 24 hours. Sometimes the distinctions between these are the difference between Palestinians who are arrested versus those who are taken for questioning and not officially arrested. Sometimes the numbers just contradict each other. Other news. Yesterday I reported that 2 Palestinians were arrested in the Patza'el settlement region in the Jordan Valley, armed with AK-47s. Today more details were published about this arrest. According to reports, the 2 were spotted at a bus stop armed with their weapons and were arrested by local security without any resistance. In their interrogation, they stated that they wanted to get to Jaffa, this is a town that is adjacent to Tel Aviv, since they own lands there. It is currently being investigated if they crossed the border from Jordan before their arrest. However, again, the story is very strange. They were arrested both armed with AK-47s. However, they were arrested by local security without any resistance. Reportedly, they were trying to get to Jaffa. Remains to be seen how the story develops. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon. After I reported in the last several days, there's been relative de-escalation. In the last 24 hours, there was an escalation again. The IDF carried out a substantial airstrike in the eastern areas of Baalbek, this is the northeastern parts of Lebanon in the Al-Asira region, reportedly targeting a workshop area of advanced Hezbollah weaponry. 3 people were reported injured in this attack. Responding to this attack, Hezbollah fired a barrage of over 50 rockets and missiles towards Nahariya as well as towards the Golan Heights. Earlier in the day, there were also substantial barrages of rockets and missiles and IDF retaliations. According to reports, rockets were fired by Hezbollah towards Israel, targeting the areas of Kiryat Shmona, Margaliot, Misgav Am, Even Menachem, and Shomra. 2 drones also exploded near Kfar Blum. They were likely suicide drones. Drones were also reported in the areas of Tel Chai, Metula, Kiryat Shmona, and Mevot Hermon. In addition to this, other rounds of drones were also reported throughout the Upper Galilee. Hezbollah claimed responsibility for 5 border incidents and launches throughout the day, including artillery fire towards the areas of Reches Ramim. The movement also published a video of a rocket successfully hitting an IDF outpost in Hardov. The IDF did not specifically report about what happened in that outpost. Regarding IDF activity, IDF warplanes reportedly attacked Hezbollah military structures in the areas of Kila village after an IDF drone identified a Hezbollah operative entering the structure. Structures were also targeted in the areas of Anakora. These are some of the pictures that were disseminated from the wreckage of those attacks. In addition, attacks were also reported in the areas of Al-Hayam. Al-Manar reported IDF artillery fire in the areas of Al-Mash'ab and Adahira. In addition to this, in Syria, Al-Miadin reported an IDF attack that took place in the outskirts of Damascus. There were no reports given about what was being targeted. That report came in roughly an hour before I recorded this, so likely we'll find out more tomorrow about injuries and what was possibly being targeted. Moving on to some of the regional developments, U.S. Central Command reported today that yesterday, on Friday, the Houthis fired 4 ballistic nautical missiles throughout the day, targeting different ships. However, there were no injuries reported, and that several drones were intercepted. Today it was reported that the U.S. carried out several attacks against the Houthis in Yemen, targeting several underground infrastructures used as weapons warehouses, and several different other attacks were also reported by local sources on the ground. The United States always states that all their attacks are carried out as an act of self-defense. This is likely for legal purposes, stating that it is not an act of aggression, but rather an act of self-defense. However, again, this is repeatedly carried out in retaliation to these different attacks. In this case, what was attacked was infrastructures used as weapons warehouses. Moving on to some of the political and general trends from the last 24 hours, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is headed to the United States on Sunday to meet the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and a series of other senior officials in the administration, including National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. His delegation includes top-ranking military officers, including those in charge of civil matters in the Palestinian territories. According to Israel's Ministry of Defense, the talks are going to focus on updates regarding the fighting, the hostage situation, humanitarian situation, and military relations between the countries. In the United States, in turn, it has been repeatedly stated in the past days that the administration plans on presenting Israel with alternatives to invading Rafah, and it is very likely that this is going to be part of this meeting. This meeting happens amidst another meeting that is going to happen between Israel and the United States this week. An Israeli delegation, including the head of Israel's National Security Council, Tzachi Hanegbi, as well as Minister Ron Dermer, one of Netanyahu's confidants, are coming to the United States in order to present to the administration, as far as Israel is concerned, what are the plans for Rafah. However, in the United States, it is again repeatedly stated that what is going to happen in these meetings is the United States is going to present to Israel alternatives to the invasion of Rafah, so it remains to be seen how all these meetings play out. Other political news. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres visited Rafah today on the Egyptian side. Speaking at the crossing, he stated, and I quote, "I came to Rafah to shine a light on the pain of Palestinians in Gaza. The world is tired of this endless nightmare. Palestinians in Gaza are stuck in an endless nightmare." He added that 8 trucks stuck on the Egyptian side of the border is a moral outrage, and Israel must allow them free access. The choice for Gaza is clear, either a tidal wave of aid or starvation. Responding to this, the Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz issued a statement stating that Guterres, and I quote, "stood on the Egyptian side of Rafah and blamed Israel for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, without condemning in any way the Hamas-ISIS terrorists who steal the humanitarian aid. He also did not condemn UNRWA that cooperates with terrorists, and did not call for the immediate release of all Israeli hostages. Under his tenure, the United Nations has become an anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli body that defends and strengthens terrorism." Other political news. In Israel, there are continuous and escalating protests, both for a hostage deal and against the government. Protesters today organized a hang glide flyover near Prime Minister Netanyahu's home in Caesarea, with signs stating, "You are the guilty party," referring to responsibility for October 7th. In addition to this, main roads were also blocked throughout the country as these protests are escalating as the hostage negotiations are being prolonged. And again, this comes amidst that report that another hostage died in captivity in the Gaza Strip. However, I will again state, this was not reported in Israel, nor was it mentioned in any of these protests. Other political news. In the United States, NPR reported today about a document that was circulated within the Biden administration, reportedly stating that Israel is, quote, "making a major strategic error in denying the monumental and long-term damage that is being done to its international standing and position due to the war." The report also mentioned a conversation between officials in the U.S. State Department and those in Israel's Foreign Office on March 13th, stating that international credibility of both Israel and the United States is diminishing as a result of the war. Amidst this, there was also a report in Israel's Ynet today about senior government officials that are voicing extreme criticism of the neglect of the international public opinion front in Israel. The report cites several different polls in the United States that are showing the continuous decline of the popularity and support for Israel among the younger generation, and it also quotes senior ministers in the Israeli government, stating that Prime Minister Netanyahu has abandoned the effort of international diplomacy and public opinion in favor of internal public opinion, quoting other senior officials stating, "We may wake up to a wave of international sanctions against Israel." So all this comes amidst different reports that are being circulated, and also amidst the statements of Chuck Schumer in the United States, all stating that in Israel there appears to be some sort of denial with regards to how the country is looking internationally and the damage that is being done to it diplomatically as a result of, at least what is quoted in these different sources, the abandonment of its public persona and the attempt to speak to the world. All this is leading up to the Rafah invasion, which the entire world is stating must not happen. Anthony Blinken has specifically said that Israel is in danger of international ostracization if such an invasion occurs. In turn, in Israel, the government is repeatedly stating that there is no way to defeat Hamas without carrying out this invasion. There are still 4 battalions of Hamas within Rafah, and that the government is committed to carrying out this invasion, and they repeatedly use the phrase, "even if we have to do it alone." If you enjoyed these reports, please do remember to subscribe, give them a like, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.